In July 1971, inside the Cannon Mills plant in Kannapolis, North Carolina, a 53-year-old man named Charles Albert Cannon walked the floor of his weaving room for the last time. He did not announce it. He did not call the workers together. He moved through the rows of looms the way he had moved through them for 5 decades. Slowly, with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the shuttles cross and return. The cotton dust hung in the morning light the way it always had. The machines ran at full speed the way they always had. 300 looms producing towels and sheets and pillowcases at a rate no other textile operation in the world could match. Chapter 1. The last walk before everything began to end. Everything looked exactly the same. Charles Cannon was dying. And the men and women on that floor had no idea that when he went, the world they had built their entire lives around would begin dying with him. Hi viewers, have you or anyone in your family ever worked for a company you truly believed would always be there? Drop the company name in the comments below and tell us how long your family gave them. And if this is the kind of story you never hear told this way, hit subscribe and leave a like. It costs you nothing, and it makes sure the next one reaches you. At its peak, Cannon Mills controlled 90% of every towel sold in America. 17 plants, over 24,000 workers, $60 million in cash reserves, and 0 long-term debt. The company did not merely employ Kannapolis. It owned it. The houses workers slept in. The hospital where their children were born. The police force patrolling the streets at night answered to the same payroll as the woman running the spinning frame on the 3rd floor. Deed records from the period show block after block of Kannapolis registered in Cannon's name. Not leased. Owned outright. The physical infrastructure of an entire city, housing, healthcare, recreation, retail, flowing from a single source. One company, one name on the building, one signature on every check. The workers knew this. They lived inside it every day, and they did not experience it as control. They experienced it as safety. A man named Robert Earl Simmons started on the weaving floor in 1952 at 19 years old. His father had worked the same floor before him. His father's brother before that. 3 generations of the same family. Same plant, same product, same city. By 1971, Robert is 38, a senior weave technician who can identify a tension fault in a loom from 40 feet away by sound alone. He does not read the fault. He hears it, a fractional deviation in the rhythm of the shuttle that takes 30 years to learn and cannot be taught from a manual. That knowledge lives in his body. It is his. And the company that built the conditions for that knowledge to exist is, in his mind, as permanent as the brick it built its mills from. Dorothy Harrington started on the spinning floor at 18 in 1961. Her mother had worked that same floor before her. In 1973, Dorothy's own daughter will start 12 years behind her, assigned 2 rows from where Dorothy stands, learning the machine from the woman who taught Dorothy to read it. 3 women. 3 generations, 1 floor, 1 company. This was not unusual in Kannapolis. This was the expectation. In 1971, Cannon Mills processes 300,000 pounds of finished textile every single day. The revenue from that production exceeds $1 billion annually, a figure that places it among the most productive manufacturing operations in the United States. The export market is growing. The domestic retail accounts are locked in. Department stores from New York to Los Angeles sell Cannon towels with the confidence of selling something that will always exist. The company feels invincible because for 80 years, nothing has proven otherwise. But Charles Cannon is walking the floor for the last time. And the professional managers waiting in the offices above, men who understand quarterly earnings reports and institutional investor calls and the discipline of modern corporate governance, are already drawing up their first round of changes. What looked like permanence was already ending, and the man who had kept the promise intact for 50 years is about to leave the building forever. Chapter 2. A death notice that signaled opportunity and collapse. The morning Charles Cannon's death is announced in October 1971, a 31-year-old financial analyst named David Murdoch reads the news over breakfast in Los Angeles and makes a note. Not immediately. Not that year, or the year after. But Murdoch, a self-made real estate developer from Detroit who dropped out of high school at 14 and built his first fortune by reading situations other people dismissed, sees something in that death announcement that others miss. A company town without its patriarch is not a company town anymore. It is an underperforming asset waiting for someone who understands what it is actually worth. He files the note away. Back in Kannapolis, the men who take over from Charles Cannon speak a different language entirely. Their names are professional, their credentials polished, their frameworks drawn from the boardrooms of publicly traded corporations. The new management team looks at the Cannon balance sheet and sees exactly what they are trained to see, costs that do not appear on competitor balance sheets. Yields. 1,500 company-owned homes generating below-market rental income, a health clinic running at a loss, a YMCA funded entirely by the company with no return on investment, a recreation department, a little league sponsorship, a community infrastructure that consumes millions every year and produces no measurable financial output. They are not wrong about the numbers. They are catastrophically wrong about what the numbers mean. Within 3 years of Charles Cannon's death, the company begins selling the housing stock to residents. The community programs are restructured and cut. The implicit agreement that the company would provide and the workers would give their lives in return is quietly dissolved, line item by line item, without a single public announcement. The workers notice. The conversations on the floor change. Not loudly. Workers do not hold protests or walk out of the gates. But the certainty that defined the Cannon floor for decades, the unspoken understanding that the company and the community were the same thing, begins to erode. Slowly, then faster. Robert Earl Simmons notices it first in the small things. The maintenance response times getting longer. The quality of the replacement parts declining. A supervisor he has known for 15 years transferred without explanation to a plant in Georgia. These are not disasters. They are signals. And a man who can hear a tension fault from 40 feet away learns to hear organizational tension the same way. In 1982, David Murdoch makes his move. He acquires Cannon Mills for $413 million. It is, at the time, one of the largest leveraged buyouts in American textile history. Murdoch arrives in Kannapolis with the energy of a man who has turned distressed assets into profitable ones before and fully intends to do it again. He is not a textile man. He is a deal man. The difference is everything. The first visible change is the YMCA. Murdoch orders it demolished. The building that Charles Cannon built for the workers, the place where shift workers spent their evenings, where their children learned to swim, where the community gathered outside the mill, comes down within 18 months of the acquisition. In its place, Murdoch builds a commercial development. The land is worth more as retail property than as a worker amenity. The decision makes complete financial sense. It is also the moment Kannapolis understands, without anyone saying it directly, that the new owner sees them differently than the old one did. Murdoch is not the villain this story wants him to be. He is not malicious. He is a man applying a perfectly rational real estate and financial restructuring logic to an institution that was never built on real estate and financial logic. It worked for his California properties. It worked for his Arizona developments. He had every reason to believe it would work here. He was applying the right framework to the wrong world. And the gap between those two things, between his framework and this world, is where 24,000 lives will eventually fall. The question is not whether Murdoch understood what he was destroying. The question is why no one in that boardroom had the standing to tell him. Chapter 3. Inside the floor, where lives and identity were built, 6 a.m. on the Cannon Mills weaving floor in 1968, and the sound hits before the doors open. Not a roar, not the heavy industrial crash of a steel mill or the mechanical violence of a foundry. Something more constant than that, a rhythm. The looms run in unison, 300 of them in a single room, and the sound they make together is less like machinery and more like breathing. A steady floor-level percussion that enters through the feet before it reaches the ears. Inside, the cotton dust moves in the air the way fog moves over water. Slow, purposeful. It catches the morning light coming through the high-arched windows and turns it gold before it settles on every surface, every shoulder, every crease of every uniform. Workers who have spent years on this floor carry that dust home with them without trying. Their spouses know the smell of it. Their children grow up breathing it. It is the smell of steady income, of a Friday paycheck, of a life that knows where it is going. The weaving floor in 1968 runs 3 shifts: day, evening, night. The machines do not stop for any of them. A loom producing cannon towels at full speed moves its shuttle across a 48-inch warp 600 times per minute. Multiply that across 300 looms, running 24 hours a day, and the output is not a statistic. It is a physical fact. The building is producing something real, continuously, in quantities the mind struggles to hold. Robert Earl Simmons is 35 years old this year and has spent 16 of them on this floor. He walks the rows the way a doctor walks a ward, not urgently, but with total attention. His eyes move across the fabric forming on each loom and register deviation before it becomes defect. A fractional change in the warp tension, a shuttle running a half-beat late. These are not things he learned from a training manual. There is no manual for what Robert Earl Simmons knows. It was built by repetition, by failure, by 16 years of standing close enough to 300 machines to understand each one as a separate instrument. He earns $14 a week when he starts in 1952. By 1968, with shift premiums and seniority, he is making enough to own the company house he rents, if the company ever chooses to sell it. His pension accrues at a rate that, by his projected retirement at 65, will deliver $890 per month. That number is not abstract to him. He has calculated it. He knows exactly what it buys: groceries, utilities, a modest but dignified life in the same city where he has spent his entire adult existence. Dorothy Harrington is 37 and has worked the spinning floor for 19 years. Her hands are different from the hands she had at 18. The skin toughened along the thumb and forefinger where the yarn feeds through, the grip stronger than most men her age. She moves through her section with an economy of motion that takes decades to develop. Every step placed exactly where it needs to be. Every adjustment made before the problem becomes visible to anyone watching. She knows her machines the way she knows her own kitchen, by feel, by sound, by the way the light falls on them at different times of day. In 1968, Dorothy's daughter Patricia is 7 years old. Dorothy already knows Patricia will work the floor someday. Not because she wants her to, because the floor is what Kannapolis is. It is what the city does. It is what the city is for. Patricia will come here eventually, the way water runs downhill, because there is nothing in Kannapolis pointing in a different direction. The community built around these machines is not simply residential. It is familial in the way that closed systems become familial over time. Workers eat lunch at the same tables their fathers ate at. The supervisors who trained Dorothy's mother trained Dorothy. The maintenance crew that knows every pipe and drive shaft in the building has been maintained by the same 4 families for 30 years. A company official addressing workers at the annual banquet in 1965 tells them, without apparent irony, that Cannon Mills and Kannapolis are the same thing. The workers in the room do not disagree. They have no frame of reference that would allow them to disagree. This is the world in its fullest form, its most complete expression. And in the economics departments of universities the workers have never visited, and in the trade ministries of countries whose names workers struggle to pronounce, and in the cargo ships moving across the Pacific at this exact moment, the numbers behind the machines have already begun to fail. Chapter 4: Growth, Debt, and a Market Already Turning Against Them. In 1993, a textile holding company called Pillowtex Corporation writes a check for the Canon name. The acquisition is valued at $300 million. The deal is announced to investors with the language that all such deals use: strategic alignment, expanded market presence, synergy across product lines. Pillowtex, based in Dallas, Texas, already operates a significant domestic textile business. Adding Canon gives it scale, adds the most recognized towel brand in American history to its portfolio, gives it the production capacity to compete with anyone, anywhere. The executives in Dallas believe this is a winning move. They are applying sound logic to a market that is no longer sound. The critical number that the Pillowtex boardroom is not weighting correctly in 1993 is not on their balance sheet. It is moving through Pacific shipping lanes at that exact moment. Chinese textile production, growing at 15% per year through the early 1990s, is not a future threat. It is a present one. A finished cotton towel manufactured in Guangdong province and shipped to an American retail buyer costs 40% less than a Canon towel produced in Kannapolis, and the gap is widening every quarter. Pillowtex's answer to this problem is volume. SEC filings from 1994 through 1997 show the company borrowing aggressively, expanding its plant capacity, upgrading its machinery, adding production lines, on the assumption that scale will eventually create a cost advantage that closes the gap with Asian competitors. The debt load climbs from manageable to serious. By 1997, Pillowtex carries $1.1 billion in total debt. The interest payments alone, financial statements from that period confirm, consume more than half of the company's operating cash flow. The machines are running faster than ever. The money to keep them running is running out. In Kannapolis, none of this is visible from the floor. The looms run 3 shifts. The cotton dust still settles on Dorothy Harrington's daughter Patricia's uniform every morning. Patricia, now 32, a decade into her career on the spinning floor, with her own pension accruing, her own retirement calculation running in her head the way her mother's did before her. She has heard that the company changed hands. She has heard the name Pillowtex. It means nothing to her. The machines are the same. The floor is the same. Her supervisor is the same man who trained her when she was 22. The paycheck still comes on Friday. Robert Earl Simmons, now 60 years old, walks his rows the way he has walked them for over 4 decades. His retirement is 5 years out. His pension calculation is precise, $890 per month. He has never had a reason to question it. The gap between what workers on that floor believe and what is actually happening inside the Pillowtex financial structure in Dallas is, by 1998, a distance that cannot be described in any honest way as a misunderstanding. It is a concealment. Internal communications from the period, later reviewed in federal bankruptcy proceedings, show that senior Pillowtex leadership is aware, by the 4th quarter of 1998, that the company's debt structure is not serviceable at current revenue levels. The retail buyers, Walmart, Target, Kohl's, are squeezing prices every contract cycle. Each price concession the company makes to keep the accounts narrows the margin further. There is no financial scenario in the internal models being run in Dallas at this time that ends with the company surviving its debt load intact. The decision that follows is not announced to the workforce. In January 1999, Pillowtex Corporation files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in federal court. The company emerges 11 months later with a restructured debt load and a public pledge to return to profitability. The messaging is confident. The new financial plan is presented to investors with charts and projections and the vocabulary of corporate resilience. Leadership tells workers the company has turned a corner. Patricia Harrington reads about it in the local paper. She feels relief. She goes back to work the following Monday and runs her machines. What she does not know, what no one on that floor is told, is that the restructured debt load Pillowtex emerges from bankruptcy carrying is, under the actual market conditions the company faces in 2000, still not serviceable. The retail pricing pressure has not eased. The Asian cost differential has not closed. The false hope has been given a legal framework and a press release. The second collapse is already in motion, and it will not take 11 months this time. Chapter 5. The Slow Unraveling, Before the Final, Sudden Collapse. By the spring of 2002, the Pillowtex plants are running on a schedule that the shift supervisors understand, but will not say directly. The orders are lighter. The machines that should run full capacity run at 70%, then 60%. Maintenance requests that would have been handled in 48 hours in 1995 take 3 weeks. Replacement parts arrive late or not at all. The conversations between floor supervisors and plant managers grow shorter, more careful, with the particular quality of conversations between people who know something they are not permitted to say. Robert Earl Simmons is 69 years old. He has been on the floor for 51 years. He retires in 2002, not because he chooses to, but because the plant manager tells him quietly, in the parking lot after a Friday shift, that the company is offering voluntary separation packages to workers approaching retirement age, and that Robert should take it while it is still being offered voluntarily. Robert takes the package. His pension is confirmed at $890 per month. He leaves the building on a Thursday in March without ceremony. He does not give a speech. He does not bring cake. He walks the rows one final time, alone, early, before the shift begins, running his hand along the frame of the first loom he ever adjusted, in 1952, when he was 19 years old and the sound of the machines was still something he had to consciously hear. He retires to a house 2 miles from the plant. On clear days, he can hear the looms from his back porch. That sound will not last much longer. The global arithmetic that Pillowtex has spent a decade refusing to solve is by 2002 no longer theoretical. The numbers are final. Trade data from that year shows American textile employment having fallen by over 200,000 jobs in the previous decade, a contraction so large it no longer registers as an industry trend. It registers as an industry ending. The companies that saw it coming have already restructured, downsized, or repositioned into specialty categories where wage rates matter less than speed and precision. Pillowtex has done none of these things. It has spent the decade running the same machines faster, at lower margins, with more debt, hoping that volume would eventually solve what strategy had failed to address. In Dallas, the Pillowtex boardroom is running a different set of calculations in the fourth quarter of 2002. SEC filings from this period show a company with negative operating cash flow for 6 consecutive quarters. The retail accounts, Walmart, Target, Kohl's, are still buying Cannon towels, but the price per unit they will pay has fallen to a level that, when measured against Pillowtex's actual production cost, generates a loss on every unit shipped. The company is paying money to sell towels. This is not a temporary condition. It is the structure of the market. And there is no internal plan, no memo, no board presentation, no strategic document produced in the Pillowtex offices in 2002 that offers a credible path out of it. Patricia Harrington is 41 years old and has 18 years on the spinning floor. She has a daughter of her own now, 11 years old, growing up in Kannapolis the same way Patricia grew up, the same way Dorothy grew up before her. Patricia is not thinking about the company's balance sheet in 2002. She is thinking about her daughter's school year. She is thinking about the kitchen she wants to renovate. She is thinking about the pension that will vest in full if she stays through her 20th year. 2 more years. She has heard the rumors. Every worker on the floor has heard the rumors. Production slowdowns. Buyout offers for workers near retirement. A second bankruptcy filing being discussed somewhere above the level where plant supervisors are allowed to listen. But the machines are still running. The paychecks are still coming on Friday. The plant manager told the floor supervisors in January that the company was stabilizing, that the worst was behind them. The morning shift arrives on a Monday in April 2003 to find that 2 of the 7 active production lines have been shut down over the weekend without announcement. Patricia Harrington stands at the entrance to the spinning floor and looks at the silent machines. They are not broken. The power is on. The materials are loaded. They are simply stopped. No one can tell her why. The plant manager's office is empty. The door is locked. His assistant says he is traveling. She does not say where or when he is coming back. Patricia goes to her station and runs her 5 active machines through a full shift. She does not speak much that day. Neither does anyone else. What no one on that floor understands yet, what the workers will not be told until it is too late to prepare, too late to plan, too late to protect themselves, is that the decision has already been made in Dallas. The only thing left to decide is the date. Chapter 6. The morning everything stopped without warning or explanation. July 30th, 2003. Kannapolis, North Carolina, 5:47 in the morning. Patricia Harrington pulls into the Pillowtex parking lot in the dark and kills the engine. She sits for a moment the way she always does, finishing the last of her coffee, watching the lot fill up around her, listening to the low, distant hum of the building that has defined every working morning of her adult life. Other cars pull in around her. Carl Davis parks 2 rows over. A woman named Sandra Bivens, 22 years on the finishing floor, walks past Patricia's window with her lunch bag over her shoulder, waving without looking up. Everything looks exactly the same. The gate is closed, not locked, not posted. Just closed, the way it sometimes is when a shift change runs late, or a supervisor needs 5 minutes before the floor opens. Patricia sits in her car and checks her watch. 5:52. The gate should have opened 12 minutes ago. Through her windshield, she can see the building clearly. The lights are on inside. The Canon lettering across the brick catches the first gray light of morning the way it always does. But the machines are not running. She knows the sound of those machines from 200 yards away. She has heard them every morning for 18 years. The parking lot is quiet in a way it has never been quiet at 6 in the morning. Not the quiet of a late opening. A different kind of quiet entirely, the kind that sits in a room after something has already happened. Carl Davis is standing outside his car now. Sandra Bivens has stopped walking. A man named Jerome Fuller, 31 years in maintenance, is standing at the gate with his hand on the chain link, reading a paper notice that was not there yesterday. Patricia gets out of her car. She walks to the gate and reads the notice over Jerome's shoulder. The language is formal, corporate. The words are carefully chosen to communicate a legal reality while using the fewest possible words that a human being would have to feel. Pillowtex Corporation is ceasing all manufacturing operations at all facilities, effective immediately. All employees are hereby notified of separation from employment. Information regarding severance and benefits continuation will be provided by mail. By mail. 24,000 people, 16 plants. 7 states. Terminated in a single administrative action, effective at midnight on July 30th, 2003, while the workers who built those plants were asleep in their houses. Nobody called. Nobody knocked. Nobody walked the floor one last time to tell Robert Earl Simmons, or Dorothy Harrington, or Patricia, or Carl Davis, or Sandra Bivens, or Jerome Fuller what was coming. The decision was made in a Dallas conference room by men in suits who would drive home that evening to houses in neighborhoods that would never feel what Kannapolis was about to feel. Carl Davis takes out his phone and calls his wife. She picks up on the second ring. He opens his mouth and then does not speak for almost 30 seconds. She says his name twice. He says, "It's gone." She says, "What's gone?" He says, "All of it." Sandra Bivens sits down on the curb in the parking lot. Not because she feels faint, because her legs simply stop holding her up. She has 2 kids in high school. Her mortgage payment is due in 11 days. Patricia Harrington stands at the gate and looks at the building. The lights are still on inside. The floor is laid out exactly as she left it Friday evening, her 5 machines loaded, her station ready, everything positioned for a Monday morning shift that is never going to happen. 18 years of mornings. 18 years of the same parking space, the same walk to the same door, the same first breath of cotton-dusted air when the floor opened up around her. She thinks about her daughter, 11 years old, growing up in Kannapolis the same way Patricia grew up, the same way Dorothy grew up before her. She thinks about the pension, 18 years vested, 2 years short of full vesting, 2 years. Federal bankruptcy court documents filed in Wilmington, Delaware at 9:04 that same morning list Pillowtex Corporation's total liabilities at $2.2 billion. Assets are valued at a fraction of that figure. $2.2 billion in debt, accumulated over a decade of borrowing to expand in a market that was contracting the entire time. The largest single-day textile layoff in American history, executed before the morning shift could reach the gate. By noon, 3 network television trucks are parked on the street outside the facility. A reporter from the Charlotte Observer is interviewing Jerome Fuller in the parking lot. Jerome is 53 years old. He has worked maintenance at this plant since 1972. He is still holding the lunch bag he packed at 4:30 this morning. He answers the reporter's questions in a flat, even voice. Not because he is calm, because the thing that has happened is too large to be angry about yet. 31 years, he says. I gave them 31 years. The reporter asks what he will do now. Jerome looks at the building. He does not answer immediately. By the end of that day, the machines inside Cannon Mills were silent. Every loom, every spinning frame, every drive shaft and shuttle and belt stopped. And every person who knew how to run them was standing in a parking lot with nowhere to go. They would never start again. Chapter 7. A town falls apart one piece at a time. The town does not collapse all at once. It collapses the way a building collapses when the foundation goes. Not immediately, but in sequence, each structure dependent on the one beside it, each failure creating the condition for the next. The first to go are the businesses that existed because Pillowtex workers had Friday paychecks. A diner on Oak Avenue called Millie's had served breakfast to Cannon Mills workers since 1961. The morning after the closure, the owner, a woman named Millie Treadwell, opens at 5:30 the way she has opened every weekday for 42 years. By 8 o'clock, 4 customers have come in. On a normal Monday, she would have served 60 before 7. She closes permanently within 90 days. The hardware store on Main Street loses 38% of its monthly revenue in the first 4 weeks after the closure. The owner, a man named Gene Presley, lays off 2 of his 3 employees in August. By November, he closes the retail floor and operates by appointment only. The 2 grocery stores within walking distance of the main plant reduce their hours. One closes entirely by December. Cabarrus County unemployment, which sat at 4.2% in June 2003, reaches 11.7% by October. The County Unemployment Office, which normally processes 40 new claims per week, processes over 3,000 in the first 10 days of August alone. The staff cannot keep up. Workers wait in lines that stretch out the door and down the sidewalk. People who have never filed for unemployment in their lives, standing in the August heat, holding folders of documents, trying to understand a system they have never needed before. Patricia Harrington files her claim on August 4th. She sits across from a caseworker named Denise, who's 26 years old and has been on the job for 8 months. Denise pulls up Patricia's file, confirms her employment history, and begins explaining the weekly benefit calculation. Patricia listens. She asks one question. "What about my pension?" Denise types for a moment. She reads the screen. She does not immediately answer. The bankruptcy proceedings in federal court have frozen all Pillowtex pension assets pending creditor negotiations. Patricia's 18 years of pension accrual, the number she has calculated and recalculated, the retirement she has built her 20-year plan around, is not available. It is not denied. It is suspended in a legal process that a bankruptcy judge in Delaware is managing alongside the claims of institutional creditors who are owed far larger amounts. The institutional creditors are represented by teams of attorneys. Patricia Harrington is represented by no one. Carl Davis enrolls in an HVAC certification program at Rowan Cabarrus Community College in September 2003. He is 43 years old. The program takes 18 months. His severance, the amount Pillowtex is legally obligated to pay under the WARN Act for failing to provide 60 days' notice before mass layoffs, is the subject of a separate federal lawsuit. The company disputes the calculation. The lawsuit will not resolve for 2 years. Carl Davis funds his retraining program with the equity in his house. Sandra Bivens takes a job at a Dollar General store in November 2003. She earns $8.15 per hour. She does not talk about the mill to her coworkers. She is 44 years old. Jerome Fuller applies for 47 maintenance and facilities jobs between August and December 2003. He receives 7 callbacks and 2 interviews. He is 53 years old with a high school diploma and 31 years of specialized experience on machinery that no longer exists in operating form in the continental United States. Every interviewer tells him his experience is impressive. None of them hire him. His pension, when the bankruptcy court finalizes the distribution in 2005, is reduced from its projected $850 per month to $390. He supplements it by doing freelance maintenance work for private homeowners. He is good at it. He is also 60 years old and doing it in the summer heat of North Carolina because there is no other option. The Pillowtex plant itself sits empty through 2004. The brick exterior, the high arched windows, the towering smokestacks. The Canon lettering across the facade remains intact. The building looks exactly as it looked when it was running. From the street, nothing appears to have changed. Inside, the looms are still positioned on the floor where they stopped on the morning of July 30th. The cotton loaded in the machines in preparation for a shift that never started is still threaded through the frames. Patricia's station, her 5 machines, the tools she kept in a specific order on her bench, all of it exactly where she left it on a Friday evening in July, waiting for a Monday morning that never came. The buildings remained. But what they once meant was gone. Chapter 8. The brand lives on while the people are forgotten. In 2004, the Pillowtex brand name, the Canon label, the most recognized towel brand in American history, is sold in bankruptcy proceedings to a company called Pillowtex IP LLC. The sale price is $12 million. $12 million for a brand that Charles Canon spent 80 years building into a household name. A brand that 90% of American households recognized in 1971. A brand that Dorothy Harrington and her mother before her gave their working lives to produce. $12 million. Less than the annual salary of a mid-level investment banker on the team that structured the original acquisition. The buyer licenses the Canon name to a textile importer. Within 18 months, Canon-branded towels are back on the shelves of American retailers. They are manufactured in Pakistan. The workers who built the Canon name in Kannapolis are not informed of this development by any official communication. Most of them find out the way Patricia Harrington finds out, standing in the linen aisle of a Target store in the fall of 2004, reaching for a different brand and seeing the white block letters on a package of bath towels. Canon. The same font, the same red and white colors, the same name her mother told her to be proud of, back when pride meant something specific and local and earned. She puts the package down and walks out of the aisle. The economic destruction moving through Cabarrus County in 2004 and 2005 does not attract the sustained national attention that the initial closure generated. The television trucks left in August 2003. The stories moved on. What remains is the slow, grinding arithmetic of a community trying to rebuild an economic base that was never designed to exist without its anchor institution. The Kannapolis City Council, working with Cabarrus County and the state of North Carolina, spends 3 years negotiating a redevelopment deal for the former plant site. The plan, announced in 2006, calls for the transformation of the Mill District into a biotech research campus. The North Carolina Research Campus, anchored by a partnership with the David H. Murdoch Research Institute and several major universities. David Murdoch, the man who bought Canon Mills in 1982 and sold it to Pillowtex in 1993, funds a significant portion of the redevelopment. The North Carolina Research Campus opens in phases beginning in 2008. It is, by objective measure, a genuine economic contribution to Kannapolis. It brings investment, construction jobs, and eventually hundreds of research positions to a city that desperately needs all 3. The buildings are modern and clean. The campus is well designed. The people who work there are educated, well compensated, and proud of what they do. Not one of the 24,000 people who lost their jobs in July 2003 qualifies for those positions. The skills that Robert Earl Simmons spent 51 years developing, the body knowledge, the ear for a machine fault, the understanding of a loom as a living system, have no application in a biotech laboratory. The hands Dorothy Harrington built over 30 years on the spinning floor cannot be retrained for genomics research at 63. Patricia Harrington, who could run 5 machines simultaneously and identify a defect in moving fabric before it became a flaw, is working a cash register at a grocery store on the highway. The campus is built on the exact ground where the looms stood. In 2007, the original Cannon Mills plant buildings, the brick structures with the arched windows and the smokestacks and the white lettering that could be read from a moving train, are demolished. The implosion takes less than 12 seconds. A small crowd gathers to watch. Some of them are former workers. None of them cheers. Jerome Fuller watches it on the local news from his living room. He watches the building fall, and then he turns off the television and sits in the quiet for a long time. The Cannon name is on towels made in Pakistan. The building is rubble. And the generation of workers who made both of those facts possible is scattered across Cabarrus County, rebuilding lives on whatever foundation they can find. What had taken 80 years to build took 12 seconds to bring down. Chapter 9. 4 hard lessons, written in the ruins, left behind. 4 lessons come out of the wreckage of Pillowtex. Not opinions, not theories. Documented facts that anyone running a company, working for a company, or living in a town built around a company needs to understand before they need them. The first lesson is about single points of failure. Kannapolis was not a city that happened to have a textile mill. It was a textile mill that happened to need people around it. Every system that sustained daily life, housing, healthcare, retail, schools, community, ran through one source. When that source failed, there was no backup, no parallel economy, no secondary foundation to catch the weight. 24,000 jobs disappearing in a single morning did not just eliminate income. It eliminated the entire structure that income had been holding up. Any community, any workforce, any family that has bet everything on a single employer is one bad quarter away from standing in a parking lot reading a notice that arrived without warning. This is not a cautionary tale about textiles. It is a structural warning about dependency. The more total the dependency, the more total the collapse. The second lesson is about delay. The signals that Pillowtex was in structural trouble were visible in trade data as early as 1980. Asian textile imports were not a rumor circulating in industry journals. They were a measurable, documented, accelerating force reshaping the economics of every domestic textile producer in the United States. The companies that acted on those signals, that restructured, repositioned, moved into specialty categories where their specific capabilities created real competitive advantage, survived. Smaller, yes. Leaner, yes. But standing. Pillowtex did not act. It borrowed, it expanded. It applied a growth framework to a contraction problem, and then borrowed more to cover the gap the mismatch created. Every year of delay between 1985 and 1999 compounded the eventual damage. The workforce that could have been retrained in phases over years, with dignity and planning, was instead terminated in a single morning with no warning and benefits to be determined by mail. Delay does not pause a crisis. It concentrates it. It takes what could have been a manageable transition and converts it into a catastrophe. The third lesson is about leadership framework. The executives who ran Pillowtex through the 1990s were not incompetent men. They were men applying a financial growth framework, leverage, volume, scale, that had worked in other industries, in other market conditions, in other decades. The logic was internally consistent. The error was that the logic was designed for a world that had already changed by the time they were applying it. A boardroom full of intelligent people, all trained in the same framework, looking at the same data, will reach the same wrong conclusion simultaneously. No one in that room had the standing, the incentive, or the institutional courage to say that the framework itself was the problem. The people who might have said it, the workers who could feel the market shifting and the orders coming through, the floor supervisors who were running machines at 60% capacity and knew why, were not in the room. They were never in the room. The fourth lesson is the hardest one to sit with. Some things, once gone, do not come back. The North Carolina Research Campus is a real and valuable institution. It employs real people doing real work of genuine importance. The investment it represents in Kannapolis is not nothing, but it is not a restoration. It is a replacement. And replacements, however good, do not restore what was lost. The specific knowledge Robert Earl Simmons built over 51 years is gone, not retired, gone. The community identity that formed around 3 generations of shared work, the particular pride of making something physical and necessary, of knowing your hands built something that ended up in homes across the country, that identity has no equivalent in a research laboratory. It can't be replicated or subsidized or renamed into existence. Patricia Harrington's daughter grew up in Kannapolis after the closure. She does not work at the mill. She has never seen it. She knows the story the way people know stories about things that happened before they were old enough to understand them, as history, not memory. The machines that shaped 3 generations of her family are gone. The building they ran in is rubble, and the name on the towels in the store is the same name her grandmother told her to be proud of, now printed on fabric made 10,000 miles away by people who have never heard of Kannapolis. Chapter 10. What remains after everything familiar has been taken away. On a Tuesday morning in 2006, Patricia Harrington drives past the lot where the Cannon Mills plant used to stand. The demolition is complete. The ground is cleared. Construction crews are already moving equipment onto the site for the first phase of the research campus. The brick is gone. The smokestacks are gone. The arched windows are gone. The Cannon lettering, the white block letters her mother pointed to when Patricia was small and said, "That's where we work. That's who we are," is gone. Patricia drives past without stopping. She is 45 years old. She works as a supervisor at a food distribution warehouse 20 minutes outside Kannapolis. The job pays better than the Dollar General where she started in 2003. She has health insurance. She has a retirement account she contributes $50 a month to when she can. It is not the pension that was 2 years from full vesting on the morning of July 30th, 2003. It is what she has. Her mother, Dorothy, is 75 years old and lives 6 blocks from the research campus. She walks past the construction site on her morning walks and does not look at it the way Patricia does not stop. There is an agreement between them, unspoken, about what looking costs. Robert Earl Simmons died in 2009 at 76. His obituary in the Kannapolis Independent Tribune lists his 51 years of service at Cannon Mills and the names of his 4 children and 9 grandchildren. It does not mention the pension reduction. It does not mention the hardware store job he worked at 69 years old to supplement the $390 per month the bankruptcy court left him. His family knows. They do not need to read it in a newspaper. Jerome Fuller is still doing freelance maintenance work in 2010. He is 60 years old and his knees hurt from decades of concrete floors. He does it because the alternative is sitting still, and sitting still does not pay the heating bill. He is one of the best maintenance technicians in Cabarrus County. He works for cash, mostly. The companies with the big facilities want younger applicants with formal HVAC certifications and no employment gaps on their resumes. Carl Davis finishes his HVAC certification and builds a small but steady business servicing commercial and residential systems across 2 counties. It takes him 5 years to reach the income level he had on the Pillowtex floor. He does not complain about this. He is one of the ones who made it work. Sandra Bivens works the Dollar General job for 3 years and then takes a position in school cafeteria services. She earns less than she did at Pillowtex. Her kids graduate high school. Her mortgage, which she fought for 5 years to keep, is paid off in 2014. She considers this a victory. She is right. These are the outcomes. not the bankruptcy filing numbers. Not the $2.2 billion in liabilities, or the $12 million brand sale, or the stock price on the morning of July 30th, 2003. Those are the numbers in the court documents. These are the outcomes. The actual human results of a decade of decisions made by people who were never asked to sit with those outcomes. The Pillowtex story is not a story about bad luck. It is not a story about an industry that simply had to change. It is a story about what happens when the people making the decisions are insulated from the consequences of those decisions, when the workers absorbing the cost of a failed strategy are the last to be told the strategy has failed. It is a story about what loyalty costs when the institution receiving that loyalty has already decided it no longer owes anything in return. 24,000 people gave Pillowtex and the Cannon name everything they had: their mornings, their bodies, their family histories, their retirement calculations, their children's futures. They gave it in good faith because the system told them that good faith was enough. That if you showed up, stayed loyal, and did the work, the system would hold. The system did not hold. And the people who built it were standing in a parking lot before sunrise, reading a notice on a chain-link fence, trying to understand how a building that looked exactly the same as it did on Friday could mean something completely different on Monday. Here is the question that does not have a comfortable answer. The warning signs were there for 20 years. The debt was public record. The market data was available to anyone who looked. The people in the boardroom were not uninformed. They were choosing year after year to apply a framework that protected the institution's short-term financial position at the direct expense of the workforce's long-term security. If you were sitting in that boardroom in 1995, knowing what the trade data showed, knowing what the debt load was, knowing what the workforce was planning their lives around, would you have made the decision that changed course? Or would you have looked at the quarterly numbers, told yourself it would stabilize, and waited just a little longer? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Tell us what you would have done. And if you know someone whose family worked in a mill town that went through something like this, share this story with them, because this is their history too, and it deserves to be heard. If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe right now and turn on your notifications. Every week, this channel goes inside the American companies that built industries, shaped cities, and changed lives, and asks the honest question about what really happened when they fell. These are the stories that textbooks skip, the names that corporate press releases bury, the people who never got a press conference. They deserve better than silence. And you deserve to know the truth.